Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Southernmanx podcast by the fans for the fans. On tonight's show, reaction to the game with Real Sociedad tonight, reflection on the draw at West Brom, preview of the Newcastle game this weekend, and our weekly roundup of all things United, including social media shout-outs and the latest round of our quiz. On tonight's show, Nick Grant, hello.
Good evening.
Joe Perkins.
Evening, everyone.
And Orlando Correa.
Evening.
Good stuff. Right, let's jump straight into it. Europa League tonight. A resounding 4-0 away victory against Real Sociedad. Joe, I know you're a big fan of the competition, as we covered last week. Was the lineup, was that what you expected? Was there the right amount of changes? Did we get the right balance in the team that Ollie picked tonight?
It was what I was expecting, Mark, in a roundabout way. I think we all knew there'd be changes. I actually think he done a good job of it in terms of the changes that he did make. And what I mean by that is I thought it might be more wholesale and sort of throw the rhythm off completely if rhythm's the word for us right now. But there are a couple of changes, obviously. It was nice to see Dan James getting a start. I haven't seen him for a while. Obviously, Shaw's been featuring regularly at left back, so Tellez coming in was good. And obviously, then the core of it, he kept the same. Obviously, the goalkeeper coming in. So yeah, I did expect something like this, but I actually think maybe it's more of an unexpected thing that you left some of those guys in rather than taking more out. So yeah, in a word, it was what I expected, but maybe. Yeah, there might have been more changes.
Yeah, exactly. So 5 changes from the weekend. Just to recap, that was Henderson, Bailly, Tellez, James, Mason Greenwood all getting starts. I think Henderson, my view is Henderson needs to run in goal. I think he's exactly what the defence needs a little bit at the moment, a bit more aggressive off his line. Nick, I'll come to you on the defence because although 4-0 clean sheet on the surface looks good, there was a few hairy moments in that first half, and I called out Maguire for his positioning, getting dragged over to the left side. Can you tell us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know you've been critical on Maguire, and he comes in for a lot of stick, mainly because of his pace or lack thereof. But I just think you're always going to get these sort of teething issues when you've got a young goalkeeper behind you that hasn't started a lot of games, particularly with that back four. You've got Eric Bailly, who is rash. We all know he's rash. He's coming back from injury. Sometimes it's difficult I would say it would be difficult to play with someone like Eric Bailly because you just don't know what he's going to do. Wan-Bissaka started his career as a winger. He's now a fullback. Tellez looks more of an attacking defender than he is, an old-fashioned fullback, should I say? So, I can't be too critical. It's a clean sheet away from home in Europe with a changed defence. But I think there's obviously been cases this season where Maguire's been caught out for his positioning, and we're starting to see a little trend, which I think is what you're referring to, of he does kind of drop that 1 or 2 yards deeper now, specifically on set plays. I don't know if that's because he's trying to account for his so-called lack of pace. So you are starting to see that, and we'll probably touch upon that more in the West Brom goal, how much extra pressure that puts the keeper under. But I can't be too critical. It's a much changed defence, 4-0 away from home. The game's done as far as I'm concerned. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Maguire's improved us. I'm a fan of Maguire. I don't think the defensive faults are all his fault. And I don't think people will be criticising him if we didn't pay 80 million for him. If you pay 30 million, 40 million for Maguire, I don't think he gets half the criticism. So that's not really his fault how good Leicester are at negotiating or how bad Woodward is.
Yeah, no, good point. And I think we definitely will cover the triangle of the goalkeeper and the 2 centre halves in the next section of West Brom. I know Gary Neville on Monday Night Football very critical about that and needs addressing. But as you say, 4-0, basically through to the next round. And that was due in part to the way we the way we played on the counter, moved the ball very quickly, clinical in the second half. Orlando, we didn't really play with an out-and-out centre forward tonight, with James, Mason and Rashford kind of interlinking their positions, and that produced a very fluid display. Is that something you think we can take moving forward? There's a lot of pace in the team. Can you see that working as an option?
I think the tie and the opposition dictated that quite a lot. European football, possession based, slow build up, want to kind of do their damage in and around, your third of the field. So I suppose it kind of affords us the luxury to play these sort of flexible three, a la maybe what teams like Liverpool and that have done previously. We're not necessarily an out-and-out nine, but players that put my teeth back in, interlink with one another, rather than an out-and-out centre forward. I think it played into our hands a little bit, really. So it could be employed, but I don't think if we were going into any big games and you saw that front three, it would fill you with an enormous amount of confidence. We might want to have a similar system, but employ different personnel, perhaps. But I think it suited this game down to a T, and you can only really give Ollie credit for that. He's been, ostracised in many sections of the media about his capabilities and his competency as a manager, but I think he got it absolutely spot on with his selection tonight in terms of what he had at his disposal, making some changes and taking into consideration the opposition. I think one of the things that pleased me was the transitional play was fast, it was rapid. It had intent. It was direct when it needed to be. It was with purpose. There wasn't an unnecessary amount of touches. The biggest criticism we had was that we won 4-0 and it should have probably been 6, 7 or 8. I think a couple of those you can say goalkeeper made a good save. I think maybe on one or two of the others we probably could have been a bit more clinical. Rashford again perhaps could have been a bit more clinical. Really pleased he got his goal, and I'm hoping that kind of gives him a little bit of a slap to say, this is what you need to do, Marcus. Ball out of your feet, open up your body, slot it in the bottom corner. He doesn't need to beat a defender for the second and third time. As we say in Portugal, he ends up overcooking the soup because he tries to re-beat a player that he's already beaten. I don't know what he's trying to achieve with that. When he first burst onto the scene, he wasn't quite like that. So to me, that's promising. I think obviously when you get 2 and 3-0 up and the game's obviously become quite comfortable, then it makes you perhaps look better than you actually are. I mean, the Fred looked colossal today. He was again moving the ball really quickly. Bruno was great, and he was bringing everyone up around him. Daniel James looked like it a bit between his teeth. So overall, from an attacking perspective, can't really fault it, other than the fact maybe we should have had 5 or 6. But 4-0 away from home, job done. Into the next round, then you can play whoever you like next Thursday. It's not really going to matter. It's dead rubber, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You take that all day long away from home. I think when we previewed this tie a few weeks back, Sociedad were top of the league, and it looked on paper pretty difficult. And so to dispatch them 4-0 in the first leg, you're not going to argue with that. It'd be interesting to see how much change he makes for the home tie. Obviously, Ahmad came on for his debut tonight. Only a cameo, sort of 10 minutes at the end. Sure, Thierry was on the bench as well, unused. It'd be good for players maybe like your Axel Tuanzebe to come in. Obviously, Matt has been away from that's what Ollie said, away from the side in the recent weeks. So you'd imagine he gets minutes again. So I know Joe's not a big fan of this competition, but I'm a great believer of we should try and win every competition that we're in, and this is a genuine offers a genuine opportunity for a trophy. So I think we should really push for it. It's still a long way to the final. I think it works out as 9 games from here on in, or from including tonight. There's still a lot of work to do, but it's a very good first leg. We needed that after West Brom, which we will be covering in the next part of the pod.
When you first signed for Manchester United, did you expect to be in the side as soon as you are and scoring the amount of goals that you are?
No, actually I didn't. I was hoping maybe to play around Christmas.
Welcome back to part 2 of the Southern Manx podcast by the fans, for the fans. During this next part, we're going to be looking back to our rather uninspiring 1-1 draw with the Baggies, West Bromwich Albion. In my opinion, we looked disengaged and a little disjointed throughout this one, obviously conceded within the first 90 seconds. What's your opinion on the West Brom goal and our start to the game, Nick?
Well, look, not for the first time. We've started slowly this season. Not for the first time. I think it's well documented how many games we've gone behind. And whilst we've won more points than anyone else, eventually your luck's going to run out. We did start slow. We looked tired. We looked lethargic. The players seemed annoyed and angry. It took the Bruno goal really to wake us up. In terms of the goal, I mean, come on. We sat here a week ago knowing what to expect from a Sam Allardyce team. There was going to be balls into the box. And for me, this is where Lindelof lets himself down, because if Maguire's not the quick one, because he's good in the air, then Lindelof needs to be able to offer something in and around the penalty area for these teams. Otherwise, you're basically just saying you can't play Lindelof against the physical side. He got bullied again, not for the first time. It is a foul. You can't have a hand over your opponent's face. If you did that in any other aspect of the pitch, if you just ran up to someone and put your hand on their face, the referee will probably have something to say about it. So it was a foul, but you've got to deal with the situation first and then complain. You can't let them score a goal, get bullied, get mauled, as Gary Neville called it, and then start your complaining. Because unfortunately, as we've touched upon many weeks ago, VAR isn't black and white. It's not the black and white solution we thought it would be. It is subjective. And right now, there's a bit of banter about United. Oh, look, De Gea got fouled again by Billy Sharp. That's all right, goal. Lindelof, pie face, goal. Like, there is a bit of banter by that bloke in Heathrow, wherever he is. So, as a centre half, you've got to deal with the situations first and complain second. And I think Lindelof's been here 3 or 4 years now, and he hasn't quite got that. There's been many examples where we've seen him have good games. I've never seen him have a great game, but I've seen him have bad games, and I've seen him cost us. And he just wasn't ready. He just wasn't ready for the game. He wasn't the only one that wasn't ready for the game, but he was the one in the danger zone where he could have dealt with the ball a lot better than what he did, and we ended up paying the ultimate price. So we've only got ourselves to blame. It was our poor start. It wasn't a good game. We didn't play well. No one come off that pitch covering themselves in glory. But I'm sorry, if you're a centre half in the Premier League against Sam Allardyce teams, Sean Dyche teams, you've got to expect balls into the box, and we just didn't cope with that. And to concede after 90 seconds is absolutely criminal.
I would completely agree with what you just said there, Nick. And I think just to sort of add to your comments on Lindelof, I don't want to be too harsh. He has had okay games for us. My opinion on Lindelof is when we signed Lindelof 4 years ago, we got caught in this sort of attitude of the changing times and, we must have a footballer at centre half. And maybe in the modern game, yes, you do need that. And there have been great footballers that have played at centre half for us, most notably Rio, I think, of that ilk. And I'm sorry, but he cannot be compared to him in any way. First and foremost, the centre half is there, whatever. I don't care what state the game's in, the way it's played. First and foremost, the centre half is there. It's to win the ball. It's to be strong. It's to get in between. It's to stop people getting touches or nicks on the ball or heads or whatever. That's the first and foremost, is to win the ball and be strong. And he's not good enough at that for me. So I would completely agree with you there. Mark, as we sort of touched on already, we did really take a long while to get going. It was only Bruno's goal, as Nick said, that got us going. And what a goal it was.
Yeah, brilliant goal. Luke Shaw, lovely little cross into the box, a little behind Bruno, and he's acrobatically sort of adjusted to put it in the top corner. I mean, this is some player. I mean, obviously we just talked about Sociedad. His goal involvements per game is, one every game. This is a brilliant player. And I think obviously we'll come on to why we didn't win the game in due course, but difficult because I think sometimes it is all on Bruno. If we can't play the counter attack and there's no space in behind, then we have to change the personnel. So if you've got someone like Fred and McTominay who are there to protect the centre halves, you know, they're there to make sure that Lindelof and Maguire don't get isolated. They're not there to start attacks from deep. So it does fall on Bruno. And you think Cavani on Sunday didn't really get a sniff. Yeah, didn't have a shot on goal. Martial didn't have a shot on goal. That tells you everything. It was all on Bruno, and obviously he got us a point. There was a few hairy moments at the back, which again we'll come on to. But yeah, what a player, Bruno again. How many times are we going to say this between now and the end of the season? How good Bruno Fernandes is. It's just run out of things to say about him. He is superb. I tell you what, if the Spanish teams had any money, they'd be looking at him now. I think they'd be. He affects the game. His numbers brilliant. I'd make him captain. I know some disagree with me about that, but he sets the tone for the team. He gets the best out of other players. He tells other players to sort of quote Jose. He tells other players what to do, how to play, and he is brilliant. And long may that continue. But Ollie needs to do two things. He needs to make sure that he is not going to burn him out, because you imagine an injury, muscle injury, like what we've seen a lot this season to Bruno, that really mucks plans up for us in the rest of the season. And the second point is, when things aren't working, there isn't the space in behind, and that creative burden is all on Bruno, and he isn't unlocking things. He's got to make changes. He's got to adapt to the opposition, just to relieve some of the pressure off of him. But yeah, superb, brilliant goal.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic goal. And like you said, the technique when the ball was behind him and the timing and the execution, we all know how difficult that is to do. Not that I tried it very much in my own box, but there you go. I mean, I can remember a couple of chances in the second half. I remember a Mason Greenwood chance that was well saved that fell to McSauce, who had a little shot on goal that was cleared off the line. Aside from that, Maguire sort of featured in both boxes in the second half. The penalty that never was, and I know that VAR disallowed it because they said it wasn't a foul, but I think that was the right decision, but for the wrong reason. In my opinion, he was offside, so it shouldn't have been a penalty, so maybe justice was served there. I was just going to ask you, in terms of that, obviously, in the other box, there was another sort of defensive lapse. That seems to be a bit of a theme tonight, where Maguire seemed to be running back towards his goal. Not really in any real danger, just had to put his foot on the ball. And he sort of crumbled under the sort of light pressure from the lad up front who scored the first goal. His name escapes me, sorry. Basically, what I wanted to ask you, in a long-winded way, I guess, is that sort of momentary lapse in concentration, is that indicative of sort of the old inconsistency we used to suffer from a bit, that's sort of become a bit more prevalent in our performances in recent games? And in your opinion, is that something that may have been impacted by Ollie's comments sort of ruling us out of the title a few games ago?
Yeah, can you repeat the question, please? No, I'm only joking. No, I think I think this team is still very, like a lot of teams, you know, and football in general, and I can vouch for this. When my playing days, confidence is still very much a confidence team, and I think there was an obvious expectation for us to win that game, and rightly so. I think West Brom had one of the worst, if not the worst, home records in the league in terms of points or goals scored, and obviously we've got the best. So I think it was not necessarily a foregone conclusion, but we were going there expecting to sort of have it a bit our own way, really. And you know, West Brom got amongst us and ruffled our feathers early. So I think as we're always chasing the game, and I think it was very obvious that we needed to win that game, that we should be winning that game to keep on City's coattails, and that by not getting the 3 points in that game, that we were essentially handing the title over, as Ollie had kind of alluded to, really. Momentary lapse or going back to our old ways. Did we ever really truly get out of those old ways? I don't know that we've done it for long enough to be able to have those back as being isolated incidents. I'm not entirely convinced as Maguire or Lindelof individually or as a pairing. I 100% agree with Gary Neville's comments earlier in the week, which was Maguire's not good for Lindelof and Lindelof's not necessarily good for Maguire. They don't complement each other. And as we've actually all alluded to in one way, shape or form, is that probably Bailly is the perfect folly for Maguire because he has the attributes that Maguire doesn't, and vice versa. So I think unless you're both two brilliant defenders, you kind of need one to do the other in the same way at the opposite ends of the box. You'd have the, like little and large combinations that work so well in the past. You kind of need to, complement one another. So yeah, I don't think necessarily Ollie's comments helped, but I think it does come down to confidence in themselves individually, but also confidence that, is my partner going to back me up? I'm not so sure. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I could completely take your point on board there. And I think my sort of last part of that question with regards to Ollie ruling us out of the title, I don't know what you gents think, but in my opinion, as a club like Man United, I think when he sort of made that statement, I can't remember which game it was, but I don't think it was off the back of a great result. Having said that, at that point in time, I think we were only 2 or 3 points off the top. I think that was a mistake, ruling us out of the title at that point. Yes, obviously it's very unlikely we're going to win the league, but I think as a club like Man United in the position we're in, I don't think he should be making comments ruling us out of the title. I don't think that's the correct message to give either to the fans or the players, whether he believes it or not. Nick, did you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I just think we were never really in the title race. I get what you're saying. You don't want to hear your manager say it, but if we're actually being realistic and look at it, we've lost recently at home to Sheffield United and drew with West Brom, the 2 worst teams in the league, in the same. If we were ever in a title race, it would have been these last couple of games and weeks. We drew with West Brom, then City go and tear Spurs apart, and then have beaten Everton to create a 10-point gap. That's the league. There's the league right there. So, yeah, I get what you're saying. You don't want to hear it, but their footballers aren't as dumb as you think. They've all got the league table on their smartphones. 10 points is 10 points, especially when it's Man City.
Oh, yeah, completely. But you're right. I think my point more is for the rest of the season, you still got to play. Is it ever a good idea to suggest your players that, well, we're not in it anyway? Because I just, my personal opinion is that is going to mentally affect their output, whether he thinks we can win the league or not. And we all have said previously before on this pod, when we restarted this pod and we're doing really well, we all sort of commented that we didn't think, although we wanted to win the league and it was nice to be in the mix, none of us really believed we would win the league. But yeah, okay, it's different opinions. That's what it's all about. That's what we like. Bit of healthy debate. Okay, fantastic. I think we've made a good part out of a bit of a poor, disappointing game there, lads. So thank you very much. Please join us again, everyone, for part 3, where we'll be previewing the game against Brucey's Newcastle.
And just finally, you've played in title-winning teams at Manchester United. Would you assess Liverpool as a potential title winner this season? Couldn't care less.
Hello and welcome back to part 3 of the Southern Manx podcast. In this part, we're going to preview Sunday's game at home to Newcastle. Mark, last week you asked me if our game at West Bromwich Albion was a must-win game. So to return the favour really for you after our draw there. So is this now for us a must-win game at home to Newcastle?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a must-win, but it's must-win for different reasons now. Obviously, we've talked about we were never really in the title race. It was nice to be involved for a bit, but it wasn't really going to be our season. I don't think this season, not with the issues we've got in the team still. I think we're fairly comfortable for top 4. However, there's some sort of red flags approaching. Chelsea, new manager, they're in great form. Leicester will obviously big win against Liverpool. They're snapping at our heels. Moisey down at West Ham, you'd expect them to fall away at some point, but at the moment they've been pretty consistent. And then obviously you expect Liverpool to put a run together at some point. And then there's still teams beyond there. I mean, Everton have still got a game in hand. Spurs, again, you'd expect them to start winning at some point. So I think it's must win because we drew at West Brom. It's must win because we drew at home to Everton. So we've dropped points there, 4 points in the last 2 games. We need to get back on track. If we're not going to win the league, then the next target should be at least be the best of the rest. Get second place, keep up the progress on last season, as in get more points per game. Let's see the progression. We were third last season, probably. I felt a bit of an overperformance slightly, where we were sort of pushing for top 4 all season and then jumped up a place sort of towards the end of it, and picked Chelsea to third. So I'd say, yes, must win because we need to be pushing third or above and keeping our points per game up. We also have got one eye on who's below us and just need to get back to winning ways. It's at home. It's against Newcastle. Newcastle are not a good team. They've had a good result against Everton a couple of weeks ago. Who Everton again a bit sort of hit and miss. Lost against Fulham, lost against Newcastle. I'm not sure how much you can read into that. They were well beaten by Chelsea earlier this week. Without Callum Wilson, I think he's a big miss for them. So I'd be not sure if he'll come back in. But I think United at home against Newcastle, that's a banker. When you look at fixtures in the season, I think we lost won 4-1 there away earlier in the season, 1-4-1 at home last season. So fully expecting to win this. It's a game that we're Man United. We must beat Newcastle at home, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, we've kind of let slip a few of these so-called bankers in the league that games should just be your bread and butter, 3 points in the league at home. We've missed out far too many of those, certainly at this end of the season as well, which is why we're so far adrift really in the title race. Nick, so obviously, as we mentioned, our next game, of course, is Newcastle. And then a week after Newcastle, we're away at Chelsea, and then away to City, and then also West Ham. Obviously, scheduled in between our game at Chelsea in a week after Newcastle, we've got the sort of dead rubber against Sociedad in midweek. So bearing in mind all of that, how far ahead should Ollie be thinking? Should he be thinking, I'm already thinking about the Chelsea game, and should that influence his selection on Newcastle? How do you think we should be approaching it?
I don't think you can afford to look too far ahead. I mean, I gave a whole sort of song and dance last week about league teams, cup teams, when we was talking about the FA Cup game with West Ham and how it didn't really benefit us. And I think the effects of that showed against West Brom, and it certainly didn't benefit West Ham. So I would put our strongest 11 out against Newcastle. Bruce probably doesn't want to hear that, but it's more must win for Newcastle than it is for us. Let's be honest, because they're the one team that could probably get pulled into the fight. Although I do think it is the bottom 3 that will go down that are there now. So I think we should play our strongest 11. The doubts are obviously McTominay came off tonight with no Pogba, so there's probably a doubt there about the midfield. Is that another chance for Donny? And then how bad is Cavani's muscle injury? So there might be 1 or 2 tweaks that might be enforced, as they say. It'll be interesting what they do at centre half, because Newcastle have got no Callum Wilson. So does that mean that Andy Carroll plays? Does that then affect his thinking on Lindelof again? So there are little question marks. There could be enforced ones, but I don't think you could look too far ahead, especially with tonight's result as well. 4-0, 4 away goals. That game should be done now. We shouldn't be worrying about Real Sociedad at home next Thursday night when there's points available at home to Newcastle and a big game at Stamford Bridge where we don't have the best record over the years. So I don't think you can look too far ahead. I'd be disappointed if we made changes for change's sake this Sunday evening. Make the changes Thursday. Sociedad aren't going to win 5-0 at Old Trafford. They're not. We're through. So that's where the changes come in. And then you go strong for Chelsea, who are obviously still in Europe themselves. So I can't see Ollie looking too far ahead, and I'd be very disappointed if there was changes for change sake. But there may be one or two enforced ones, like we say, Cavani, Scott McTominay, and then after all the song and dance that we've made about Lindelof, with Andy Carroll playing, does that affect his thinking now that Bailly's back on the scene, or does he think Bailly still can't play 2 games in a week, which was the last thing we said about him before he got injured again? So, yeah, there could be changes, but let's hope there's not too many.
Yeah, I think certainly, if you're thinking ahead to the Chelsea game, surely a week should be long enough for the modern footballer to have a rest for your key players. Like you said, we're not going to lose 5-0. We're going to score. So to me, it is a bit of a dead rubber. If we lose that fixture, then I'll eat my hat, as they say. So I can't see it happening. I think Ollie's been quoted as saying Pogba's not going to play again in February. I think Cavani and DVD, Van der Beek, is quoted as having muscular injuries, that they've not specified that. So there is an argument to say that they may be available for Sunday, because he said something similar about Martial, and obviously he featured. So there's still some potential selection issues, and I'll get your thoughts on this in a minute, guys, on selection, because I was also going to ask you about, do you think anybody from tonight maybe have forced Ollie's hand a little bit on their performances? But I'll come back to that at the end of the part to kind of get your predicted lineups, as it were. Joe, so obviously we're going up against Newcastle and Steve Bruce, former captain, club legend. Looking at his kind of career as a manager, he hasn't really had too many high-profile jobs. Maybe Villa, Sunderland, perhaps you could argue at the time. Hasn't really gone on to do very much in the sense of his managerial career. Do you think it's a case of the teams he's managed haven't been very good? Is he a good manager? Do you think that he would ever be in a position that he could really be considered for the United job at any point? What's your opinion on Steve Bruce as a manager?
I think what happens is you tend to get typecast, and I think being a manager in this day and age, in football these days, I think relatively Steve Bruce has had a decent managerial career. I mean, even to still be around getting decent jobs after, he's been managing a long old time now. I mean, I can think of numerous clubs. He's had sort of numerous promotions, hasn't he, from the Championship, and he's done well to consolidate with teams and stayed up for a couple of seasons. So I don't know whether I'd agree with the notion that he's been an unsuccessful manager. I think he's good at the level that he's been at, if that makes sense. But yeah, as you rightly say, he's managed big clubs. I mean, Aston Villa and Newcastle are big clubs, I suppose, in Premier League terms, in terms of their history and the fan base. And I think listening to Steve Bruce when he's interviewed, I think what sometimes maybe goes against him, and I don't know what you guys think about this, or if you have an opinion on it, is I think he can be brutally honest when he's interviewed in the media. As an example, I think what happens a lot when I hear him speaking about his team's performances, he never really shies away from saying, look, we've not been good today, we've not done this right, we've not done that right, we've not. And I think that maybe that feeds into this sort of opinion of him being not a great manager, and sort of managers get their sort of people jumping on their backs left, right and centre after a couple of bad results in any club. That's the way the game is now. It's a fickle game. But yeah, I think maybe he's sort of pure honesty when he talks to the media and he's in public, etc., maybe goes against him a little bit. But I certainly wouldn't describe him as a bad manager. I think he's now typecast in this sort of, getting teams promoted from the Championship stroke, average sides in the Premier League, keeping them up is sort of the best he's going to get. And then if clubs are sort of consolidating, they're going to look elsewhere for that sort of more flair manager to take them to the next level. Maybe that's where I see his managerial career. But I certainly think, I keep saying in relative terms, that seems to be my phrase the last couple of weeks, but in relative terms, he's a decent manager that's managed good clubs, and he's done okay. And obviously he's a club legend. But in terms of seeing him for any jobs higher up the table, including United, I think that ship long since passed if it ever left the dock.
Yeah, I agree with you on all the points there. To be honest with you, Joe, and I think going back to your first point, I think you're absolutely spot on. Managers get typecast. They get put into boxes really, and it's very difficult for them to break the shackles of those stereotypes really. So I think you're right. Once they're set in a certain way, it's very, very difficult, particularly and strangely enough for British managers, certainly of a certain age. It seems to be the merry-go-round of going between certain types, certain caliber of clubs. When you have managers, foreign managers that come from abroad, 20, 30 years their junior, that are getting bigger opportunities really. Is that right? Is that wrong? I don't know. Unless you're an ex-England legend like a Lampard or a Gerrard or something like that, you don't necessarily seem to get those high-profile opportunities. Is that right? Is that wrong? I don't know. Would they do better with those opportunities? I'm not necessarily sure we're going to get the opportunity to find that out, Joe.
Yeah, and I think, like you said there, just to add to that, I think we see a lot of trends in the game, and there's a few we've touched on recently, but I think we might have spoke about it. Might have been off air, but clubs, sort of top clubs, signing Championship goalkeepers that are 44 and have been around for decades, and like played in the Premier League 10 years ago. And I think there's a tendency for these trends. It happens with managers. You've got that pool of managers that when clubs are struggling in the Premier League, that are there waiting to come in. Your Sam Allardyces, David Moyes, lastly, Alan Pardew's even. I think it can become a bit of a trend. And you said, Steve Bruce, I guess, falls into one of those sort of categories of being typecast, not necessarily saving teams from relegation, but sort of bringing them up from the Championship and consolidating.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And sort of looking ahead then, obviously, for the game on Sunday, and bearing in mind today's result, people that shine today. So, Daniel James came on and did well. Was started and did well, should I say. Greenwood didn't do too bad. Bailly came in, clean sheet. Henderson, we've touched on, in goal. Do you think there's any danger, and if I come to you first, Nick, that anybody from tonight has kind of given Ollie a headache in terms of his selection for Sunday? And what do you think his approach and his 11 will be for Sunday?
You'd like to think he's got headaches, but that's a good thing. And, as I touched upon earlier, the one that I would be thinking with my manager's hat on, if I was going like uber cautious, there's no Callum Wilson. It's going to be Andy Carroll or perhaps Joe Linton. Or if that's what Bruce is going to go for, then as Ollie would be thinking, I can't afford another Lindelof howler. So does Bailly get in? That's what I would be thinking. But then you never know with these sort of managers as well, because whilst we touch on them being typecast, sometimes they get typecast for a valid reason, that they do bizarre defensive things. And Newcastle might come here with none up front and play Almiron in that false nine, and he's awful. And then that could be a game for Lindelof. Lindelof will get a 10 out of 10 that game. So it's difficult to try and second guess your opposite number. But to answer your question, the one that I hope has given him a headache is Bailly, because actually he played quite well tonight. There was a one passage of play that he went through about three people and played a nice ball forward. You don't see Lindelof doing that. So that's the one. I'd like to see Greenwood start and give him a run of games on the right. He is the future. And then it will be one of Martial or Cavani, depending on the knocks. Rashford always plays. So there's your front three. Bruno always plays. The two in the middle will probably be Fred if McTominay's out. Maybe with Donny. Maybe this is a game for Donny. And then, the back four, but quite rightly so, we've got questions about four because of some of their performances. So that should be the area of focus. But if I had to get pressed on who's raised the biggest question mark, it's the Lindelof by conundrum.
No, absolutely. And then over to you, Mark. And you've, just to kind of press you a bit further, you've mentioned earlier on about you'd like to see Henderson get a bit more of a run of games. Do you think that an opportunity like this, say Europa League, that's a good opportunity to maybe get, although obviously the league game after that would be the big one at Chelsea, but do you think, say, like Europa League clashes, 2 in a week, home and away, sandwiched in between a league fixture is a good opportunity to get at least 3 games back to back to kind of see where he's at with things, and maybe even just apply a little bit of mental pressure on De Gea, if anything, even if he knows he's starting on Sunday for Chelsea? And if that would be the case, do you think De Gea would be able to handle that?
Yeah, I'd like to see it. think you've seen at Chelsea recently, Tuchel brought Kepa back in for Barnsley, clean sheet. Played him again against Newcastle, clean sheet again. Then was asked after the game and he said, Mendy's still the number one. We don't know if Henderson is going to be Man United's future number one. We just don't know. He had a great season last season with Sheffield United. Look at Sheffield United now versus last season. I don't think you can put all that down to Dean Henderson, but he's a big part of it. They concede a lot of goals. They didn't concede a lot of goals last season. The one thing that's different is the goalkeeper. In particular, I know the new lads. He does concede a lot of goals from range. Henderson proved he's a decent shot stopper. I think he was involved in a successful season last season. So why not? Why not give him a try? The problem is, and I don't think Ollie will do this. I think it'll be De Gea back in goal on Sunday. De Gea is the most well-paid goalkeeper in world football. If you take him out of the team, you've got a problem because he's going to sit on the bench. His market value is going to go down. What are you going to do with David De Gea? You need him really to have a half-decent season so that he holds a value. If Dean Henderson is the answer, you're going to need to do something about De Gea, move him on, whatever. He's got a very big decision to make, and it's beyond who starts against Newcastle. This is a longer term. Is Dean Henderson the answer? You see from tonight against Sociedad, he's coming out, he's claiming crosses, he's punching everything. The Rashford goal is him being aggressive, catching the ball, throwing out early to Fred, and from goalkeeper to Rashford and in the net in a matter of seconds. That's positive play from the understudy. Why not give him a chance against Newcastle? Why not build up something now? Like we said, we're pretty safe top four. Why would we not? I mean, look at Everton. We dropped points there because of David De Gea. No doubt about that. We can't concede 100% of the shots on target. That clearly shouldn't happen. He's been brilliant for us, and I know some people look at this as fickle. He has been brilliant for us. Best goalkeeper in the world at one point. He isn't anymore, and we've got players ready to step up. We don't know if Henderson's going to be good enough, and we won't know if he gets a game here and there in Europa League. So,
no, I'd agree with you.
I'd like to see it, but I don't think.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you 100% there, Mark. And I think De Gea used to, gain us 10, 15 points a season, maybe get us through one or two cup ties. The thing that worries me is that, one, he's no longer doing as many of those world-class saves, and perhaps maybe because we're not under the cosh as much, which is a good thing, but he's actually contributing more to our downfall and costing us goals and ultimately costing us games and points. I wouldn't be concerned if Henderson got a run of games that he would be incompetent enough to cost us goals, cost us games because he'd either be nervous or inexperienced or something like that. So yeah, I think you're right. At some point, it's going to be an issue that's going to have to be addressed by Ollie and the board, really, as to how they approach that situation.
You've gone on mute there. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, that's the one. Sorry. So Joe, for you, how do you predict Sunday's lineup? And would there be anybody from tonight's fixture that you think would have maybe earned a starting berth in that 11 on Sunday?
I'd like to think Bailly might play, as I can't remember if it was Nick or Mark talked about, after performing relatively well tonight, but I don't think he will. I think he'll go back to the Lindelof-Maguire partnership, rightly or wrongly. Any other players that might play? Again, I'd like to think that Henderson would get the opportunity after performing well in the games he's come in. I know that you boys are big fans of the fact that he's actually coming out to claim a lot of crosses. We've noticed compared to De Gea, he doesn't really do that among other sort of aspects of his performance. But I think it will be largely unsurprising. I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was sort of back to the default Premier League lineup, i.e. your McFred's at centre half, as I mentioned, Lindelof and Maguire, Wan-Bissaka back to Shaw, and then I guess Cavani may come back in and play up top with Rashford and hopefully Greenwood on the right, but who knows?
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right. Ollie does seem to have a default setting, certainly in the Premier League, when there's certain players available. So I think that's probably the likely thing that's going to happen. Like you guys, I think I'd like to see him mix it up a little bit and make some changes. But I can't see it personally at the moment. I think obviously the main thing is to get 3 points, no injuries, fresh legs, rest for Thursday, build on the next sort of 2, 3, 4 weeks when we've got the fixtures against the tougher opposition. Because I think what we'd very much like to do, that we need to do, is we need to make not the top 4 a foregone conclusion, but we don't want to be going into the end of the season. I think we've got tough games towards the latter part, if not the last game of the season. I think it's Wolves or something like that. We don't want to be going into games like that thinking, we need the 3 points. We want to kind of be going into those games fairly comfortable, without having to look over our shoulder like we have done, previous seasons. So yeah, that's my opinion on that one. So no, thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed part 3, and join us again in part 4.
Next, I'll have to thank the manager. He's been absolutely fantastic with me. He has guided me through my career. I had my highs, I've also had my lows, and he supported me very well through that time. And I can't thank him enough. I'm going into coaching, and if I haven't learned from him, I can't do coaching.
Hello, welcome back to part 4 of the Southern Manx podcast by the fans for the fans. So we're going to round up a week in the life of Man United here, and we're also going to do our new feature, the Man United quiz. So make sure you have your pens, pencils and paper ready this week for the quiz. It'll be myself hosting it this week to the lads, but play along at home. And then also we'll finish the show with our usual social media shout outs and comments, one of my favourite parts of the show. So first of all, though, big week in terms of contracts. We'll start with you, Mark. Mason Greenwood's put pen to paper, I think until 2026, so effectively 5 years. Where do you see him in terms of United's present and future? How special is this lad?
Oh, absolutely buzzing, Nick. I'm a massive fan of Mason. I think he is not a flash in the pan, one season wonder, Kiko Makeda vibe. This is a kid who's got so much talent, so much potential. First on the scene, obviously, last season was brilliant. There was a few beautiful goals last season. The one where he took early at Old Trafford, top corner. I think it was against Bournemouth, but absolutely stunning strike. He's just, I think there's a lot of debate around what his best position is. People saying, we think he's going to play through the middle at some point. I'm not so sure. He's talking about he needs to improve his heading, and he's looking at someone like Cavani in training, and he wants to learn how to head the ball like Cavani does. I mean, I'm not so sure that he will end up there. I like him from the right. He's adding a bit of creativity for it from that position. The beautiful thing with Mason is he can go left, he can go right, both feet. He studied Ronaldo. I was listening to an interview with him with Rio earlier, and that's why you see so many step overs. That he's been learning or practicing that. He's sort of in his younger years, and now kind of. He looks at Rashford, looks at Cavani, and trying to learn more from them. But he was saying there was a big part of his development, Kieran McKenna, that one of Ollie's assistants. Now he gave him his chance through the youth teams, played him 2 years up, and you can see he's got it. I mean, bit of a slow season this season. Obviously had that sort of issue in lockdown at the start of the season on England duty. I'm not sure if that's affected him. There were some issues with him being late or something like that, but we just want to see him get back to his best. And I think the goal in the FA Cup against Liverpool showed you what he's all about, and you just want to see him in the team now, really, from now until the end of the season. Try and get as many goals as he can. I mean, I think he's only on a few this season. If he can get double figures, 15 goals, something like that, be a good milestone. Just keep up his progression, because you don't want him going stale. Obviously, new contract. That is a big backing from the club. I think he's got 5-6 years. He's gone from about 25 grand a week up to 75 grand a week. That's pretty substantial for a 19-year-old. When we're talking about Ahmed Jallow making his debut, he's 18. He's a young player. Mason's only a year older than him, and we're expecting him to contribute week in, week out now. So, I'm a big fan, and I'm just hoping that he can push on from here now, and he'll be a regular in this United team for years to come.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you could always see that there was something special about him, especially in his finishing ability, comparisons to Robin van Persie because of the left foot. And I agree. I think now, once you start out on the wing, it's harder to now come inside. Everyone thought Rashford was going to end up as an out-and-out number 9. We're 5 years in, he's still playing left wing. So I think Mason's an inside forward in that Mo Salah sort of position for myself. So look, talking of the future then, JP, and looking at some of the Champions League results last night as well, there seems to be a new wave of superstars, of poster boys of football, because eventually the great Messi and Ronaldo are going to decline or hang up their boots, and you've got people like Haaland and Mbappe making the news this week. Obviously, Phil Foden's been making the news on these shores. Where is Greenwood in terms of those players? Is he right in there with the mix? Still a little bit way to go?
I think there's huge potential to be talked about in those groups. I think what I would suggest at this stage is that, as we know from years gone by, players with potential develop at different rates, at different times, at different speeds. I think a lot of it, obviously, natural ability, and he's got all the ingredients, hasn't he, to make an absolute superstar. There's no question about that. But I think the stars need to align, and a lot needs to come together for that to come to fruition. And I think he's got all those ingredients. I think at the moment, I mean this in the nicest possible way, just by sort of studying his demeanour and the way he carries himself. Fantastic player, but maybe still more of a boy than a man in that sense. And there's nothing wrong with that. He's 19 years of age. I think, if he can play like that as a boy in a man's game, imagine what he's going to be able to do as a man. I think that, so I think that there's no reason why he won't be considered in those conversations. He's maybe not talked about in as high regard as some of those players you mentioned there, but then there are scales to that as well. Mbappe's already won a World Cup, for instance. He's got that experience. Mason's not done anything like that yet. But I think, there's huge potential there. And I think if he continues to develop, has the right leadership and guidance, the right attitude, then there's no reason why he can't be a top superstar taking over from those obviously absolute world legends we've been lucky to actually watch in our lifetimes grace a pitch in Messi and Ronaldo. Yeah,
sure. And then, so from moving on from one player that's at the beginning of his career and signing a new deal to a player that's perhaps coming to the end and maybe not getting a new deal, Orlando, Juan Mata out of contract at the end of the season. Perhaps not getting a deal, although, never say never. He might trigger a 1-year extension or something like that, but it's looking unlikely as time goes on. Sum up his Man United legacy.
Bit of a weird one, isn't it? I think really special player when we bought him. I think he was Chelsea's player of the season 2 years in a row, one of the standout performers in the Premier League in those couple of seasons. Got ousted a little bit when Jose came back to the club during his second stint. Wasn't a Jose type player, so eventually we were struggling obviously, and in January he was available, and I suppose you could argue it made sense because it improved us, but at the same time it probably wasn't a position we necessarily needed. And I think that alongside the Fellaini purchase was the initiation of the erratic purchasing that we were doing. It was kind of buying because it was going to make us a bit better than what we had, but there wasn't really any kind of long-term thought. I think Juan's career can be described as doing well in moments and in games, but never really felt that he was and it was often said he was a United player. I think he maybe had a few games where you think he might have been turned in the corner, but he never quite did. I think by all accounts sounds like an absolutely fantastic bloke. A lot of charity work, instigated the 1% club, I think it called, where he's sort of getting all the professionals to do 1% of their salary. I think a lot of his hanging around the club, that makes it sound like he's loitering with not wanting to be there. But I think a lot of, in terms of him being kept on by the club, perhaps I should say, is because of his camaraderie with the Spanish contingent at the club at the time, Herrera, De Gea, when we were sort of, is he not going to stay? I think that had a lot to do with it. But for me, obviously, goal at Anfield, superb, absolutely brilliant goal. The free kicks that he had, especially the one I remember, particularly at Juve, when Jose was giving it that after we were just battered for the vast majority of the game and then pinched a win. FA Cup final. So, yeah, I think that's how you can kind of describe Mata's career. He had some fleeting moments, did well, but never really sort of cemented his place. And I think that his body let him down in the sense that the older he got, he was never the quickest. He just wasn't really going to adapt and fit into our side. So wish him the very best of luck. I think, get yourself down on the south coast, Marbella, get yourself a nice couple of years, sun, sea, sangria, take it easy, and enjoy the twilight years of your career, Juan. Muchas gracias.
I agree. Moments probably sums it up. Juanfield, FA Cup final, free kicks against Juventus. I remember a great performance at home to City in the Van Gaal era where we won 4-2 and Juan scored between, I think it was Joe Hart still at the time's legs. So yeah, thoroughly nice chap, and we wish him the best if it is to be the end. But is there anything more you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think he was just sort of a bit of a victim, really. That Juan Mata was one of those players you sort of had to build your team around, a little bit like what we're doing with Bruno. You'd have to be all instigated around him. Bit of not like a luxury player in the sense, in the style of Ozil, like you have to build around him. And I don't think he offered enough to be able to do that. So I think that's probably why he didn't quite get the career at United that he potentially could have had, or that he had in his earlier years at Chelsea. But no, agree, great bloke, and wish him all the best.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, listeners, I know you're excited for this. Grab your pens, pencils, paper, crayons. It is United quiz time. And then whilst we're rounding up the scores, we'll also give the shout outs to our latest followers and comments on social media as well. So here we go, a little bit of light-hearted banter. So lads, today I've done 5 questions just like last week, but they're all around the treble season. So all of these questions relate to the glorious 98-99 season. Okay, so give me a thumbs up if you're all ready. Yeah, and listeners, play along at home, and let's be honest, give us a comment on ones that you didn't get or got and things like that. We'd love to hear your feedback. So question 1, the Quicksilver, Jesper Blomqvist, signed from Parma in 1998 and scored 1 goal for the club. Who was it against?
Yeah. Next.
Do you know what? I remember the celebration. It was a really geeky sort of, but I cannot remember for the life of me who it was against.
Okay, question 2. Who made the least amount of starts in all competitions in the 98-99 season? Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Wes Brown, or Teddy Sheringham? So who made the least amount of starts in all competitions in the 98-99 season? Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Wes Brown, or Teddy Sheringham?
Is that all competitions, Nick?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Question 3. Sir Alex invited a special guest to the home Champions League tie against Barcelona. Who was the guest?
Oh, yes.
So Sir Alex invited a special guest to the home Champions League tie against Barcelona. Who was the guest?
Yeah. Brilliant.
Question 4. What is the now infamous quote John Gregory said about Dwight Yorke after the striker asked to leave Aston Villa for United? And I'll give a point to who gets it like more word for word. So what is the now infamous quote John Gregory said about Dwight Yorke after the striker asked to leave Aston Villa for United? And here's my all-time favourite United player. Dwight Yorke, that is, not John Gregory. And your final question. United lost 5 games in all competitions in the 98-99 season. Can you name the teams they lost against? So United lost 5 games in all competitions in the 98-99 season. Can you name the teams they lost against? And I'm only going to give a point for the correct full answer. Okay, so just like last week, then the lads are going to send me a private message on WhatsApp. So whilst I'm tallying up the scores, we're going to do something a little bit different to keep things moving along. We're going to go straight into our social media shout outs. As always, we appreciate any sort of contributions and feedbacks and comments and follows. We've recently set up a Facebook page. We've got our Twitter page, both at Southern Manx. We've had more subscribers this week on YouTube. So thank you very much for that. It's totally appreciated. So I'm going to hand over to Mark now for the social media shout outs whilst I tally up the scores.
Thank you, Nick. I'm just thinking of the last question now. I'm going to have to send it as per, so I won't have all the answers there. Yeah, so really good week in terms of interaction, social media, as Nick mentioned there with Facebook account, but particularly on Twitter was sort of, I think, one of our highest weeks for new followers. I think it was 16, 17 in there. And just to read out a couple in particular. So thank you for everyone who has started following us. Obviously, I can't read them all out, but Alan Tonge, ex-professional footballer at Man United, was a trainee, joined the club when he was about 16, released about 20, 21, then went to play for Exeter, had some kind of spinal injury and had to retire. So very sad story for him, but he has started following us. So thank you, Alan. Also, another podcast, actually, the Barstoolers Premier League pod. They've actually one of our subscribers on our channel, so I thought we'll give them a little shout out, given it's good to support similar people trying to do similar things to us. I think that's good. Check them out, and yeah, we'll do a load of shout outs next week. I think there was also a West Ham fan that might have followed us by the name of Jack Oliver. So, and I think he actually commented about our previous pod. So, brilliant. Let's keep the comments coming, and we'll feature more of these followers on Twitter next week. But also there was on YouTube a few new subscribers there, which we've mentioned about the Barstoolers, but also Dan Smith. So thanks for your comments, and I hope you're enjoying the pod. We want more comments on the videos. So when you've listened to this, hit subscribe, drop us a comment. If you think it's not very good, tell us. If you think it's good, great. But yeah, the more feedback we can get, the better, and we can change things moving forward. That's a bit about it from me, Nick.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that. Yeah, definitely one of my favourite parts of the show. It's love to see all the interaction. So here we go then, listeners. I hope you've done well as well. So in third place, how do you want me to do it? Do you want me to give you the answers first, or say who finished where? I can't remember what we did last week.
Do answers first.
Answers first. Okay. So question 1 then. Jesper Blomqvist signed from Parma in 1998 and scored 1 goal for the club. And he celebrated with his hand in his sleeve, doing this in the pouring rain at Goodison Park against Everton.
Thank you very much.
I've done very badly here.
Question 2. Who made the least? None of you got this one right. None of you got this one right.
What?
Question 2. Who made the least amount of starts in all competitions in the 98-99 season? The answer actually was Teddy Sheringham. With 11 starts. Wes Brown 16 and Ollie 17. So Teddy.
That was Wes Brown's one. That was his breakthrough season, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's why I thought it would have been him. So that's fair enough. Teddy, what a player.
You all got the next one right, so perhaps a little bit too easy. Sir Alex invited a special guest to the home Champions League tie against Barcelona. Who was the guest?
The King.
Eric. Not
King,
Jemba
Eric.
Jemba. Who are?
And then question 4. What is the now infamous quote John Gregory said about Dwight York after the striker asked to leave Aston Villa for United?
If I had a gun, I would have shot him.
Yeah, I'd have shot him if I had a gun in the office. So that is the quote. And then final question. I'll only give a point for the correct answer in full. So United lost 5 games in all competitions in the 98-99 season. Can you name the teams they lost against?
Spurs in the cup. Arsenal at Highbury. And I had to do the social media update, so I couldn't think of any others.
Was it Borough? Did we lose to Borough?
Yeah.
And I've got the first 3 right, but the other 2 I'm suspect on. I went Sheffield.
Borough. Was that Borough at home or away?
Yeah, Borough at home just before Christmas, and that was actually the last game we lost all season. Before that, we lost at Hillsborough to Sheffield Wednesday.
Yes.
Oh yeah, Sheffield
Come
Wednesday.
On, please tell me.
3-0, wasn't it?
I've got 4.
We lost the league game. We lost 3 games in the league, all by 3-0, if I remember.
Well, yeah, conceded 3 goals. We actually lost to Arsenal twice. Community Shield.
I didn't count Community Shield.
So yeah, Arsenal twice, Spurs in the Worthless Cup, Sheffield Wednesday, and Middlesbrough. So
that's not bad, is it?
Hang on. Read them out again.
Arsenal twice.
Yeah. Oh, so there's only 4 teams.
Yeah, there's a bit of a trick question.
Oh, come on. I've got 4 out of 5 there. You got to give me a point for that, surely.
Well,
no.
Let's have a look if you WhatsApp them me.
Go on, have a look.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you can have a point. Yeah, you got 2 points, Joe. So right in 3rd place, Ozzy with just the 1 point. 2nd place with 2 points, JP, and then 1st place was Mark with 3 points. So well done. So I hope you played along at home. Let us know, listeners, how you did. Be honest. I don't want to see a load of 5 out of 5s, but to be fair, at this point, any comment will do. But yeah, be honest. If you didn't know those ones, hope you enjoyed that part of the show. What we're going to do is, what we're going to do now is obviously end the show. It's been an absolute pleasure again. Solid 4-0 win, immediate reaction after the Real Sociedad game. Hopefully that's us through to the next round of the Europa League. We looked back at West Brom with unfond memories. We previewed in depth the Newcastle game coming up, which also tailed into Sociedad and Chelsea the week after. And then we had a little bit of fun with the quiz and gave our social media shout outs and talked about Mason's new deal. So that was tonight's show on Southern Manx by the fans, for the fans, from Orlando, Mark, JP and myself. Have a good evening and we'll see you next week.
Do you think you get the credit you deserve? Couldn't care less. That's another... I don't really mind. You know, within the club, all the discussions I've had with the club, the dialogue, we know what we're doing. We know what we set out to do and where we are on our plan. Yeah, and of course, you're always